Hello again, and welcome to a special edition of This Week in Cool Guitars with me, Doran Markowitz from D Guitars Miami. This week I'd like to do a follow-up to my previous video regarding that Dean Razorback bass that I custom modified for a friend of mine who happens to be a lefty. I wanted to do a follow-up with him here because his story is something that's inspirational. His name is Don Monroney. Say hi, Don.
Hi.
And the reason it's inspirational is because Don didn't start out as a lefty player. Don became a lefty player because of a debilitating injury that occurred to his left hand, which made it impossible basically for him to be able to fret comfortably. It was an extreme honor to be able to work on this bass for him, and actually this was more of like a group project between the two of us. As I stated in the previous video, he was the one that cut all these appliques that you see on the body and on the headstock out of gold foil and an X-Acto blade. The man has got incredible talents, which is ironic because what is it you do for a living, Don?
Well, Doran, I'm an assistant manager for an asphalt plant.
That's admirable that you work. Everybody needs asphalt, but this type of talent shows that I wouldn't say your talents are being wasted at the asphalt plant, but this was done by hand. You didn't even use a stencil to mark it off. You just did it freehand, right?
Well, when I designed this bass in my mind, you know, when the Hebrews built the tabernacle and they built the Ark of the Covenant, they had exact instructions from the Lord on how to make everything, even how to transport things. Well, I just kept coming up with ideas in my head, things I wanted to do, because, you know, I owe everything that I have and everything that I am to the Lord. I mean, before I came to Jesus about 6-7 years ago, I didn't know how to play anything. And I started out playing in the church, and I decided I wanted to play a bass, and I started out playing right-handed. And it was easy for a while when I was just one finger playing. But then, when I started having to hit multiple strings and space my fingers out, it just wasn't working.
So you
So
switched.
I prayed about it, and I went out and I bought myself a left-handed bass. Started teaching myself to play left-handed. And before it was over, now when I play right-handed, it feels freaky. It really does. So I wanted to make something, you know, to honor the Lord. So I had this idea to put an extra piece of wood up here and turn this into a crown. And I even put a small cross in the hole inside of it. This bass originally had an inlay of a razor blade.
That's right.
At
You
the
wanted
12th
me to
fret.
remove that.
So I had you take that out and put the razor, or take the razor blade out and put the cross in its place. Here we have a Trinity symbol, Star of Bethlehem, the Alpha and the Omega symbols, and then of course the Jesus fish up at the top. And when I wanted to put these designs on the bass, well, I was not an artistic painter. I didn't know what to do. I knew I wasn't going to be able to paint them on by hand. And I came up with all these ideas, and some of them I decided, you know, well, they wouldn't work. And one day I was in the store and I found a roll of Christmas wrapping paper that was gold foil. So I made my patterns and sized them and put them on top of the foil. I used a kitchen cutting board. I taped them down. I got an X-Acto knife and one of those head magnifiers, you know.
Right.
And needless to say, people laughed at me.
I'm sure.
But when it was over, you know, they weren't laughing anymore.
And then you brought the appliques over here, and
Right.
we basically worked together to stick them on, and
That was
a
tricky in
trick.
itself.
That was very tricky.
Yes, it was. So I wanted to try the hip shot bass bridge. I had never before seen a bass that had a tremolo on it, you know? And then the next thing I know, well, I wanted the best of everything, so I got the EMG pickups and all the gold hardware. We have a bass boost switch right here. We have a switch to, this has got an 18 volts power supply. It takes 2 batteries in the back, and we can use it to go from 18 volts to 9 volts.
Well, actually, no. Remember, I spoke to Rick at EMG, and he recommended against it. So we've left that there as a dummy switch, so that way it at least doesn't have a hole.
And I even got a kill switch here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what the old pastors in the church are going to think about
They're going to think this is
tremolo
very
and the
wild.
kill switch. But you know, I guess they'll just have to live with it.
Tell us more about the injury that led you to this point in your life. What happened?
In 1993, I had a Glock semi-automatic pistol, a .45 caliber. One day I was putting it away into a holster, and my bad, I wasn't paying enough attention to what I was doing. And the strap that holds the pistol in the holster got caught in the trigger guard. And I pushed the pistol forward and put a .45 hollow point right through my hand. And now this metacarpal shaft here is actually a piece of metal rod that orthopedic surgeons refer to as flexi rod. And it's got a piece of bone off of the front of my hip wrapped around it. And it still works, but it doesn't open all the way, it doesn't close all the way, there's not much spacing between the 2 fingers. You know, I can lay it on the fretboard and put another finger here and it'll just slide over on its own because it won't stay. So, like I said, it just wasn't working out trying to play right-handed. And you know, a lot of guitar and bass manufacturers, they don't care about left-handed people at all.
Well, it's 10% of the
right,
population.
and you know, so it's like the choices are real slim.
Now, you're mainly right-handed.
I've been
right-handed.
The only thing I can do is play left-handed. I can't do anything else left-handed.
You know, most people with a debilitating injury like this would have just called it a day and not even bothered to continue. When you found that you couldn't do the stretches, a lesser man would have hung it up. Where did you find the strength to say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to switch to lefty?
Faith.
Faith.
Faith, love of the Lord. You know, I had many years of my life to learn to play a musical instrument, and I didn't care enough to give it the time or the effort. And then when I got saved and I started going back to church, then I wanted to do something to praise and honor the Lord.
So you play in the church?
Yes.
Wow. Can you show us a couple licks?
I don't know. Kind of nervous about that.
Well, I understand. What do you think of the creation here?
I think it's awesome. It's just.
Are you happy with my work?
Oh yes, absolutely.
I remember when I worked on the double neck and converting it, your biggest gripe was that the dots on the sides weren't wide enough so that you could really see in dim lighting. How do you feel about these mother of pearl dots?
I like it, and you know, for somebody that's getting long in the tooth like me,
yeah,
I like it a lot. It's very pretty.
Good.
Everything worked out great. I mean, I'm just so happy with how everything turned out.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to.
It's just amazing, you know? And I mean, it's not perfect, but man is not perfect.
And that was the idea of this, too.
Right.
It was, you know, I wanted to try and make it an example of, I guess, the passion aspect of your belief in everything. So, you know,
well, you know,
Don, it was a pleasure. It was a real pleasure and a challenge at the same time to get this thing converted to where you wanted it to, and working on it. And I felt inspired because of what you had originally told me about your injury.
Right.
I knew I had to do something special with this bass rather than just you know, making just a lefty. I wanted it to really stand out and be something that
well, it is,
showed
Jordan.
what you needed.
It is, and I'm really proud to be the owner of it.
Okay.
Dean Guitars, coming to a house of worship near you. Hallelujah.
Thanks again for watching, and this is Dorn Marcus from D Guitars Miami. Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call at 305-896-1811.